And before I start, I'm going to introduce someone that is going to help us with this meeting. So this is Annette Esposito, who's our bilingual coordinator for Norwalk Public Schools.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Annette Esposito. I work for the Norwalk Public Schools. I'm here with my coworker Elizabeth. We are here to help facilitate translating the meeting. So we wanted to ask anybody who needed translation if we could all sit kind of in the back area, and Elizabeth and I will help with that. Instead of doing English, Spanish, English, Spanish, we'll be here till 11 o'clock tonight, and I'm sure we don't want to be here that late. So if anybody needs help understanding the meeting, can you gather in the back over here, and Elizabeth and I will translate. I just wanted to say it in English so that if you guys see us, talking in the back, it's translating that we're doing, and we hope not to disturb the meeting too much. Para los que hablan español o solamente entienden el español, mi nombre es Janet Esposito, trabajo para las escuelas públicas de Norwalk. Estoy aquí con mi compañera Elizabeth. Estamos aquí para servir de intérprete durante la reunión. En vez de estar acá arriba con el señor, hacer inglés y español, estaríamos aquí hasta las 11 de la noche y no queremos estar aquí tan tarde. Le pedimos si podemos unirnos aquí atrás en un grupito si necesitan entender lo que está pasando. Nos podemos sentar atrás y nosotros dos podemos dejarles saber lo que está ocurriendo. ¿Ok? Thank you.
Okay, please feel free to have a seat. Heidi Keys, board members are sitting up here. I don't know if there are any other current board members. And if people want to get seated, we'll proceed in momentarily. Okay, I guess people want to stand. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Barbas. I'm a member of the Board of Education, and I am chair of the Facilities Committee. So, the proposed new schools and the review of our current facilities is under my responsibility, under my watch, I guess I should say. And there are other board members here, and I'll just introduce everyone. So, board members Brian Meek and Heidi Keys. Board members Shirley Mosby and Eval Krupker. Our chair, unfortunately, is on a business trip and was unable to be here. And I think there are a couple other board members might be arriving a little bit late because of other conflicts. And the mayor has called me, and he will be on his way shortly, but he had a conflict as well. You'll hear shortly from our architect, our senior architect, John Ireland, from the firm Selden Petroselli. And everyone knows our superintendent, Stephen Adamowski. In addition, there are any questions. We have two very important people here. Bill Hodell, who runs facilities for Norwalk Public Schools, and to his left, Alan Loeb, who does the same thing for the city of Norwalk. So all the key players who are involved in operations and making things work are here and can answer your questions. But we have a presentation we'll start off with to kind of explain why we're here, how we got here, and what we're trying to do. So, it seems forever ago, but under a previous superintendent, this board realized that our enrollment was bulging. We have portables at a number of our schools, and if any of you are Jefferson parents, you're particularly familiar with portables. And we had classrooms in closets and corners. We were putting art in a cart, and we are at really bursting at the seams, I think is probably the best way. So the board approved a study for $250,000 to look at our facilities and to hire a professional demographer, a firm called Malone and McBroom, to look at why our enrollment was growing and what was it going to look like so that we could plan and we could come up with a 10-year plan for our facilities. And so that is what we did. And that report, they started working on it during the summer of 2015. And that report was finished in late 2015 and then was submitted to the Facilities Committee of the Board of Education in January of this year. It was a 350-page report. The Facilities Committee reviewed it, and then in February, we took 3 different meetings to review. There was so much material. And then in February, the Common Council and the full Board Board of Education had a joint meeting and got a summary. And we've now been trying to figure out the best way to proceed and the recommendations we need to make. The thing that is driving our timing right now is the state of Connecticut. So the state of Connecticut is going to pay for about 1/3 of any new construction. And we have to file paperwork with them. We only get one chance a year. It's June 30th. So we are trying to make some decisions. We've been working since we got the original reports in January to try to come up with the best decisions for our school system. And we've been looking at proposals, and many people have said, well, why didn't we hear about them sooner? But we needed to figure out what would work. And some of the proposals we got from this study really didn't fly with us. And others we knew needed more research. So that's what we've been doing. And so now you're going to hear the fruits of all that work. I think the thing to remember is 10 years ago we had 10,500 students. Today we have 11,500 students. We've got 16 portables, students in portable buildings, and we've got schools that were built like Jefferson for 400 students that have 600 students. So we have a problem and we need to address it. And one of the solutions is that we're going to build some new schools. And we're also going to renovate some of our really old schools. So we have some buildings that are from 1938, so they're almost 100 years old. And they are in dire need of renovation, and the state actually would consider them a new construction. The renovation will be so extensive. So we're going to talk about 2 of those ideas, of building a brand new school as well as renovating a really old school. And you're going to hear about what we need. A lot of sites don't work for a school. So you can't just build a new school on 2 acres. You need at least 8, and ideally 10, maybe even 12. This is Board Member Eric Anderson, our latest board member to join us here.
I apologize for the delay.
And so we're going to hear a little bit about that. We're going to look at some sites. I know there are a lot of questions. Why aren't we building a school here? Why aren't we looking at this site? Why aren't we looking at that site? And you'll hear from Mr. Ireland that they looked at a total of 20 sites and considered a lot of options. And in the end, there just weren't that many options because, as you know, Norwalk's a pretty well-built area. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Ireland.
Great. Thank you, Mike. As Mike said, my name is John Ireland. I'm with the firm Silver Petroselli. As Mike said, we also teamed with the firm of Malone and McGrew to do a lot of the site. Sound better? Okay. Thank you. What I thought I'd do is talk to you a little bit about the whole process and kind of try to summarize what Mike described as about a 1.5-year process. We started this process about a 1.5 years ago. And while there's a lot of information here, it is a complex problem in that there's over 1 million square feet of school buildings. So 1 million square feet in the 12 elementary schools and the 4 middle schools. We're going to set aside the high schools for now, because that is the focus is on the elementary schools and the middle schools, and ultimately the creation of new schools. So this evening we're going to talk about and look at how you're growing as a school district, which is, by the way, unique in the state of Connecticut, at least compared to many of the other districts. So I'm going to talk a little bit about benchmarking and comparing your schools to the state standards. It's a good way of looking at things and trying to look at them across a level playing field, and ultimately trying to create a lot of equality in these school standards. So we're going to talk about number, square footage, and growth. We're also going to focus this evening on some very specific projects. Obviously, we're here tonight on this, in this building on this site. It is part of the focus of the overall study. And certainly one of the first steps we envision is potentially this site. We're also going to talk about the Conus Ridge Middle School and its relationship to the overall program. Finally, and certainly not least, Columbus and Jefferson, because they are 2 of the highest priorities that came out of this study. So with that, the 12 elementary schools average about 55,000 square feet each. They are about 12 years below the state average, and they are currently completely at capacity. So again, look at the state square footage standards, and the schools are full. You've got 15 portable classrooms currently deployed in the school district. So not only is the building full, it's over full. It's the mayor. Thank you, sir. So, elementary schools at capacity, nearing an age where they are in need of improvement. Middle schools, there are 4 middle schools averaging 100,000 square feet. They're 12 years below the state average. Those 2 are at capacity or over capacity. So that creates a situation where we start to take a look at the capital needs. So we describe the capital needs as what needs to be done to the schools to improve them. And the slide up there in front of you has 2 columns of blue, light blue and dark blue. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but they represent dollar amounts. We went around, surveyed all 1 million square feet of school, and then identified the improvements to bring them up to a current or a more modern standard. That equates to, you see the figure in the upper right, $77 million spread across these 16 schools. The numbers are spread roughly, the darker colored number in the blue is the building number, and the lighter color is the site number. So we're looking at both the sites, and currently, of those schools, there are 240 acres of site area. So we're looking at the age of those sites, the parking, the relationships to buses, recreation spaces, all across the board. Inside the building, we're looking at everything from the roof all the way down to the basements and the boilers. The educational space, we're looking at the educational space as it's used originally, as it's used today, and then projecting as it might be used in the future. The other thing we've looked at, and again, this gets back to the idea of creating an equality across the school districts. Now we've introduced the same 2 blue colors, our capital needs. The orange color is the amount that has already been spent on those schools to date. So it's one way of looking at these schools and starting to evaluate which school needs the most attention and in what order do they need that attention. So that was one of the matrices we used. Finally, in school construction, it's broken down roughly into 3 categories. We talk about capital needs. That's the... Thank you. So thank you. In fact, I'll set this down. So in these 3 categories, the capital needs are the improvements, are the things we talked about before. The next category is alterations and extensions, where a school needs to be expanded or needs to be altered. And then the last category is this renovation category, or renovate to a new standard. And that is the highest need schools. So the slide here identifies West Rocks as a, do I get the pointer? No, I cannot. So West Rocks as a renovate as new, and Jefferson and Columbus as renovate as new or renovation. In other words, the schools that are the highest needs. The other schools that are categorized by the alterations, and finally the capital needs. And again, we can go into all the detail, but I don't think we need to this evening to see all of this. We looked at the vision, the board has looked at the vision, and I think everybody supports the idea that we want to provide exceptional educational experience in that school environment. So how is that site, how is that building providing that exceptional educational experience? I wanted to highlight at least the first 5 goals there. We want to find the best place. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why you need to expand. But with 15 portable classrooms and a growing population, I think everybody understands that we need to grow the schools and increase the size of the schools. So we started with looking at the existing schools, looking at the 1 million square feet, looking at the 240 acres. Where is it best to expand? Educational choice. Dr. Adamowski is going to talk more in detail about educational choice. But the concept there is to introduce 2 brand new pre-K to 8 school programs. And again, we're going to talk more about that. But that would be a new school deployed here in the city of Norwalk. This inter-district pre-K, so intra-district, not inter-district, no, only within the confines of the city of Norwalk. So it's intra-district magnet school. We talked about improving the physical environment, and I think everybody would support the concept of ultimately getting rid of the portable classrooms. They're portable, they're intended to be temporary, they're intended to reach the end of their useful life, and I think this study envisions doing that. So to do that, we need to build more space. We start to look at the demographics and the enrollment, and we're going to continue to do that. So this year, as Mike said, the school population increased by 61 students to 11,000, I think it's 393 students currently in the school system. So the study revealed that you will continue that pattern over the next 10 years and ultimately reach a growth of 11,000, close to 12,000 students here in the city of Norwalk. Again, what happened this year, and we've got it here in this slide, we projected it last year, and this year the numbers came in, and that growth was right on that high side. So what happens with the demographer is they look at low, medium, and high. And doing the analysis, that 350-page study said it is most likely that you will be on the high side of that growth. This year that was confirmed. In fact, it was within 6 students. So it was a fairly good projection. And obviously you could say, well, it's easy to project the next year. But again, not to get too far into the entire study, you go all the way back to children being born, you go all the way back to housing sales, you look at the whole community as a whole, this growth pattern will continue. Again, I apologize. So tonight we're here to focus on the South Norwalk. South Norwalk has many unique things, as you all know about it. One of the biggest concerns is the creation of a neighborhood school. Neighborhood schools are, I think, what everybody would envision as belonging to a community. With the dense population here, there isn't enough school for a neighborhood school. And so there will always be a need to bus children here to certain schools. I think the challenge is how many of those students could walk to a neighborhood school or be driven or ride their bikes to a neighborhood school, and how far do they have to go to a neighborhood school? So again, a very complex problem. Last year, there were in fact 332 students in the district who were unassigned. And I think the overall goal is to create these neighborhoods, create the choice where you as parents and the children will have a choice of where they can go to either first the neighborhood school or second to one of the intra-district magnet programs. So, how do we get there? We create what we call an ideal program, and it is very similar to, our button is too close to these. So the ideal program starts with a diagram that looks at adjacencies, and then to scale, we literally draw the classrooms, draw all the spaces that support the classrooms, and then we apply those to the sites. This is the pre-K 8 brand new school in 2 sections or in 2 sets of classrooms per year, and it will total, again in an ideal world, 512 students in that model. The second one we want to focus on this evening is the pre-K 5, and that is in 3 sections or 3 classrooms per year, and that totals 482 students. Very similar in total number, but very different, if you will, between the two. One of the differences is the auditorium, which is shown there in red, gymnasium, cafeteria, and science and technology classrooms. When we look at the pre-K 5, the auditorium is shared with the gym. Again, fairly typical in a pre-K program to use the gym as an auditorium and not create a separate auditorium. We also then focus more on music and art, and those two use the gymnasium. So 2 different building types, and again, we take these and apply those to the site. We look at all of the numbers on the right with the state space standards. The state will reimburse you for an amount up to space standards, and it's a somewhat antiquated, somewhat of a complex program that they run, but again, it's a way of benchmarking and saying, where are are we at the right level and the right size school? So we did that again for both of those models. We then looked at the sites, assessed them, and evaluated them, and determined which one was the easiest site to expand. So here's the focus area, and again, if you'll bear with me. There we go. We're going to focus a little bit more on Ben Franklin School, the older school that's been turned over. There's a park here. Columbus Magnet is here. Brookside Elementary here. Brian McMahon High School here. This is the site we are in this evening, the Nathaniel Ely site. Roten Middle School is here, and Roten Elementary School. So this is the focus area of this evening. What's interesting, we think, is it's about 1,000 feet, although you can't drive 1,000 feet, from this site to Brian McMahon. It's about 2,000 feet to Roten Middle School, again, if you were to draw a straight line, and about 3,000 feet up to the Columbus Magnet School. So these are to scale relative to each other, and I'm going to run through a couple. As Mike mentioned, we looked at a number of sites. We started with, of course, the existing schools. We started with city-owned property, the parks, and the open space. And John Ryan Park is 2.2 acres, and not a great site for a school. Schools of this size are somewhere between 8 to 12 acres. So as you can imagine, 2 acres is not going to work. And there is Columbus Magnet. One of the interesting things, and I think you're going to see this on a lot of these slides, are these lines very close together. That is topography, that is rock. So again, a very common feature, especially here in this area. It's not a stopper as far as construction is concerned. In other words, rock exists. It's actually a good thing. It can be a great foundation, but it does increase the construction cost. So it's, again, one of the criteria we look at. Here are 2 other sites. We said we look at Ben Franklin, it's about a 3-acre site, and then Flax Hill Park, 10.5 acres. And again, the topography there, those that know the site, look how close these contours are together and how confined it is. So again, we did not look at that site and try to deploy a school on it. So we're focused here on the Nathaniel Ely site, and it is a 17.4 acre site. And we want to talk a little bit about the building we're in right now is here. We're currently in this space right here, and those that took the tour know that they're, and not shown in this model are the, what is currently the tennis programs here in the building. And the current tennis courts are here, basketball courts are here, and those that have followed things have also heard about a little bit of wetlands. There's about a ½ acre of wetlands, and it's located here on this back 3-acre parcel. So the total parcel is 17 acres, fairly level here in the middle. This is the ideal building site, right here on this level, currently where the softball or baseball field is. So that's an ideal building site because it is fairly level. It is available. It is ready to go. So, this evening we're going to talk about the 2 options here on this site. One is to build a pre-K-8 in 2 sections, and the other is to build a pre-K-5 in 3 sections. Both a very similar size, both fit very well on this site. So there is an A and a B option. And again, Dr. Adamowski is going to tell you more in detail about that. But A and B option, you could do either on this site. And in fact, we believe that all of the programs currently on the site, including this program here in this building, the tennis, the basketball, everything can remain on this site and function well, and I think function very well together. The other unique thing about this site is we are currently 76 feet above sea level. This is a high and dry site, and I know there's some concern about wetlands. I envision it as almost a bowl sitting on top of a rock. So it's piped on one side, piped on the other. So it's not an extensive wetlands. It's not as though this site, again, those that know the site, it's not as though the entire site is wetlands. There's a small bowl sitting on the 3-acre top of this site. The other thing we're going to talk about is Ponus Ridge. Ponus Ridge is on a approximately 30-acre site, is an ideal site to expand for a lot of good reasons. One, it has a very good and active program in it now educationally. What it lacks is the on-site pre-K-5 program. So we're going to look at how to do that. And then we're going to look at Columbus and Jefferson and how they could be expanded. So here is a plan that shows the pre-K-8 on this site. And again, it's hard to see, but in detail, the existing building remains over here. Tennis courts and potential expansion of the tennis courts here. Basketball court here. Main entry, cafeteria, auditorium, gymnasium in close proximity to the rest of the sports program. Art, math, technology, media center, and K, 1, 2, and 3 classrooms. On the second floor would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 science programs. And here on this site, there is a potential to go all the way to the third floor. Again, once you've added a second floor, it's easy to add a third floor. Stairs and elevators are easy to extend. The roof becomes an option. The roof opens up options for things like solar or photovoltaic. It could be a Wi-Fi site. It could be a roof, green roof, those that have looked at that option. But there's a lot of educational options that could occupy that roof space. Again, this is a concept that's been put in front of the Board of Ed. The other option we looked at then is the pre-K-5. Very similar. You'll notice that the auditorium is shared with the gym, cafeteria on the left, main entry in the center, media center. Again, a very similar layout. The other thing that we are conscious of is that this building could be used in the evenings. In other words, the school portion on both of these plans, at night, no need for custodial services. It's easy to put doors in and have the school effectively closed at night and the community use of the balance of the school. In fact, the state tax dollars are encouraged to use state tax dollars to build schools that are used 24/7 is a little bit dramatic, but used during the day for education and then used at night for the community. And again, both of these concepts support that idea. So, second floor, very similar, and same option here. The roof deck is an option for both education and deployment of technology. So Columbus, here the option is, and again I apologize, the floor plan is very light underneath, but the current gymnasium is here. It would be converted into a cafeteria kitchen addition with additional educational classrooms, and then a second floor mezzanine for a media center over the cafeteria. The gym would be moved outdoors into an addition, and yes, we would be engaging some of that rock. Again, in today's construction, it's fairly straightforward. It does add some additional cost, but in the scale of things, really an insignificant addition to that cost for rock removal. So that's about a 7,000 to 8,000 square foot addition to the Columbus School. Again, it can be configured then in either a pre-K-5 or a new pre-K-8 model. And Dr. Adamowski is going to talk about that. So here is the site plan of Columbus, and I'll try to work these buttons a little better, I apologize. The other thing we're going to think about is looking at more of the transportation needs and the drop-off needs, and the potential to introduce a new drop-off lane. Here is the gymnasium addition, new playing fields, and the potential perhaps for additional parking. So this 3.2 acre site, the rock is here, and here's the current parking. So again, trying to maximize this site and improve it. So we talked a little bit about equity and talked about creating choice. One of the ways that we've looked at that is going across the schools, and I put this up here to start to look at. We looked at the capital needs, the state investment to date, educational equity, in other words, how well is it deployed today, facility equity, does it have the same components of the school as the other schools, site, same way, and then the demographics. And that caused us to focus on, again, Columbus and Jefferson as the first priorities, and in the middle schools to focus on West Bronx. So here is CONUS. This concept looks at altering the entire 104,000 square feet of the existing school and then adding 26,000 square feet onto this end of the school. That's roughly the east side of the school. We've looked at it. It's fairly straightforward, fairly level, and easy way to deploy an addition to that school. So up there, for the first time, we're starting to look at cost. In this study, we've looked at three numbers consistently across the board: about $250 a square foot for alterations, $350 a square foot for additions, and $450 for new construction and large-scale additions. So those numbers are conceptual cost, and this is the anticipated city cost. So as Mike mentioned, the state will reimburse the city for school construction. And while those that follow it in detail know that it is currently in a state of change there at the state, certainly with budgets and with school construction. Pardon me. With school construction, it is still going to be funded at some level. Your current rate is about 32-33%. So here's the addition, pre-K, 1, 2, and then moving the other classrooms indoor on that one. The site would be rebuilt, new parking, new bus drop-off, and new parent drop-off, new athletic fields. Columbus, again, cost, starting to look at that $350 a square foot to alter the entire school up to a like new standard, and then $450 a square foot up for the addition to that school. Jefferson. The vision at Jefferson is to obviously get rid of those portable classrooms. To do that, a larger scale addition is needed. It is a very compact site. It is already beyond its elastic limit. Those that know it well and know that it does not function well at times with traffic. Certainly when the portables are removed, that will free up some space and free up some of the, what was recreation space. So again, here are the numbers. About a $21 million total project, of which the anticipated city share is $14 million. So again, large numbers. All of these numbers are currently in front of the city as a recommendation of moving forward within this 5 to 10 year plan. Here's the Jefferson plan, talking about converting the existing gymnasium, same thing, into cafeteria, kitchen, putting a gym stage addition on, and then creating a media center and a mezzanine above the cafeteria. So again, trying to maximize that square footage and increase it where we can. There's the site plan with those additions and the potential for additional parking, additional recreation. So, next steps are ultimately to determine the A and B option here on this site. As Mike mentioned, we are looking at a time frame of getting an application into the state by June 30th of next year. And while that may seem like a long time from now, in our world it's just around the corner. So with that, Dr. Adamowski, I think hopefully you can make this work a little bit better than I did. All right.
I noted that there are a number of civic leaders here this evening. I just want to recognize and thank you for being here. Representative Morris, Representative Labielle. We have a number of Mayor Rilling, of course. We have a number of members of the City Council with us this evening as well. Reverend Curtis, former Board Chair Rosa Murray. Thank you all for your interest and support of our students, and a particularly warm welcome to all of the parents that are here tonight. We have parents from Columbus, and a few from Jefferson, and a number of parents from the Odyssey Preschool here at Ely. And it is for your students that, you know, this effort these decisions, and ultimately the commitment of our city to building good schools for our children is all about. So I want to talk specifically about some educational options for Columbus and Nathan Healy. And these are based upon a set of assumptions. I'm not sure how clear that is from where you're sitting, but I'll talk with you a little bit about these. So first of all, there are two feasible building sites in South Norwalk. And as John mentioned, his firm looked at multiple sites all over the city. And tried to avoid sites where a building or property had to be purchased, because that escalates the cost of the school beyond the building cost. And also try to avoid situations that would require eminent domain, making someone else's property in order to have enough room for the school. So in all of South Norwalk, we have two viable building sites. And one of them is the Columbus site, which is currently a school, and second is the Nathaniel Healy site where we are here tonight, which has approximately 15 acres of buildable acres available. And that's an important point, because at this site it is possible to build a school without having to take or change the current school. In other words, you can build a school next to it, we have a nice educational campus, but still preserve the preschool and the other services that are here, and that is also true for grassroots tennis. And it would be our intention to partner with both organizations to create a synergy that would provide even greater services for the children involved in the new school. As suggested by our enrollment study that John mentioned earlier, our enrollment growth is centered in South Norwalk. And ironically, this is the fastest growing area of our city, and it is the only area of our city that does not have a neighborhood school. And so it has to be part of any solution relative to the district's building program, the number of schools we need for the future, to have a school in South Norwalk. This is an equity perspective on our part. All families should have the choice of a good neighborhood school. And this is true for every district in the state of Connecticut, and it should be true for us as well. And neighborhood schools anchor neighborhoods. They create communities. They prevent gentrification. They allow us to be a diverse city in which all different kinds of people and their children can get a good education and do well in life. And so, in some respects, our neighborhood schools are the key to maintaining our diversity, which is one of the great strengths of our city and of our schools. Another assumption is that phase one of our building program, which would be accomplished over the next 5 years, needs to add about 900 new seats to prevent over-enrollment during the next 5 years. And at least half of these should be in South Norwalk. So you're probably aware we grew as a school district by about 150 students last year. We're just under growth of 200 this year. This is a great problem to have. Throughout our state, school districts are declining in population. That's primarily because our population is aging. In our cities, with the exception of Norwalk and Stamford, our cities are declining precipitously, both in general population and in school population. But we happen to be in a vibrant, growing city, and that needs to be celebrated. Our city population is growing, development is going great guns, and our enrollment is going up as a result. And this is all just part of building a great city and making sure that generations of children to come have the same opportunities and better opportunities than the students who have gone through our schools previously. So these 900 new seats are really comprised of two 450 student schools. And as John mentioned, the two prime places for this would be the Pauling site and the Ely site. Now, in addition to preventing overcrowding from an educational standpoint, I know this will be important to every parent in this room, our plan has to address multiple education objectives. And many of these are in the Board of Education's strategic operating plan. School and program quality and effectiveness. We have to have effective schools that can prevent the gaps, learning gaps and achievement gaps from occurring for our students. Our students need to be able to do interesting work. School should be fun. There should be special aspects of school that are interesting to children and excite them and motivate them to learn and grow and become more than where they started. And so the program of the school is extremely important to us. We also want to enhance parental choice. I think that every parent deserves the default choice of a good school in their neighborhood, but then choices of other schools based upon special interests and needs. We need to reduce busing. Currently, 80% of our students are bused somewhere. We spend $8 million a year on busing. And imagine what we could do educationally with that $8 million in terms of services to our children. These new schools must provide for additional instructional time and summer learning, meaning they need to be air conditioned, they need to be able to operate year-round, so we don't have regression or learning loss occurring during the summer. They need to have their own school-based preschools. So we're not starting school anymore in kindergarten, we're starting at preschool. They need to have a full continuum of services for special needs students, and they need to be economically, racially, and ethnically balanced and reflective of our entire city. Those are all goals that we can reach. They're all goals that we have a responsibility to achieve. In doing that, partnerships are key. So we have on this site, for example, the Odyssey Preschool and its partners, and an environmental science team, the Maritime Aquarium as the provider of that. And we also have the Grassroots Tennis Association. And in any design of the school here, it is incumbent upon us to find ways that we can maximize the resources of our partners, work with them to offer what they do best, but also provide those special opportunities for our students. Wouldn't it be wonderful if by virtue of attending a particular school, if you were a student, that you got tennis lessons, and you learned to play tennis, and you were on a tennis team. And that was special, simply because you went to this special school. So, one of the great things about our city is we are rich in resources of human capital, and people who are willing to do wonderful things on behalf of our children. We have to work with them in partnership as opposed to compete with them. And that is, I want you to know that is the orientation of our school district as we approach this. So let me talk to you about two options for this site. And as Mr. Marvin said earlier, this has been kind of winnowed down from things that wouldn't work or couldn't work to things that have possibilities and may be able to work well. So you'll see option A on the screen, and that is to build a K-8 Columbus on the Ely site, 2 sections per grade, 450 students, and simply move the Columbus School from its current location here on the Ely site. So it will be 2 sections, 2 classes per grade, K through 8. I'm sorry? Thank you. So picture Columbus Magnet School on the site. It's a K-8 school, 2 sections per grade, K through 8, and Columbus essentially moving, keeping the same design. Columbus happens to be one of our best racially balanced schools. It's 56% minority. We would maintain that on the site. However, we would give students the preference in the lottery who could walk to school and who could be in the immediate neighborhood or in the Rubin Court area and so on. We do that very easily while maintaining the balance of the school overall by how we do the lottery for the rest of the city. Now, if that were to occur, we would then renovate as new the current Columbus school. That is one of the schools that's designated for renovation as new because it's very old and it's crumbling and it needs a gut rehab in order to be viable as a school for the future. And we would then open that school as a pre-K-5 neighborhood school, 3 sections per grade, 450 students. And in doing so, we would greatly impact the Jefferson School as well, positively, because the whole neighborhood, believe it or not, people find it's hard to believe, but the whole neighborhood around the current Columbus is bused to Jefferson. And Jefferson is way on the other side of I-95, right? But because there is no school in that neighborhood, that's where students are bused, and that is one of the reasons why Jefferson is so proud. So, you know, I listed some advantages to these 2 plans that are a little different. I'll just review this with you very briefly. The option A plan that I just talked about adds 450 K-5 seats. And that's a very good thing because that reduces enrollment pressure on our other Norwalk elementary schools, which is needed in virtually every case. It relieves overcrowding at Jefferson School, reduces enrollment pressure at the middle school level. Any K-8 school will contribute to that. It reduces busing at the elementary level. We still will be doing a lot of busing, but this will not involve growth of busing, and we will have more students being able to walk to their schools. And it can be accomplished within our racial economic balance guidelines, which are provided to us by the state. So that's option A. And then there's an option B. And option B is just about the opposite of that. In option B, we would build a pre-K-5 school on the Ely site. 18 classrooms, 450 students. We build a pre-K-5 school on the Ely site, 18 classrooms, 450 students. And we would utilize that as swing space for Columbus during renovation. So picture a 450 student building on this campus. The Columbus students come over here for 2 years during the period of time that their school is being renovated. They move back. The Columbus school is renovated as new as a K-8 school, 2 sections per grade, students in that case. And then we would populate the K-5 school at Ely as a neighborhood school. So both of those options are very workable. Now, I should point out that all of this takes a lot of time, which is why we don't have time to waste. Unfortunately, in some cases, our community has kicked this can down the road for some time, both in terms of the work our schools have needed, but also in terms of enrollment plan. And we are on the verge of over-enrollment, as you can see from our enrollment study and enrollment projections. School building is a 3-year proposition. It takes a year of planning, which would be the next school year, and 2 years of construction. So you saw dates on these slides, and so, for example, 2023-24 would be the culmination of option B. We went back to option A. That would culminate in 2023-24 as well. So again, we don't have time to waste, and we cannot have endless discussion. We have to have good discussion and good planning, but we also have to proceed with a sense of urgency and have our focus be on all children in the city. Because while there are areas of greater need, while there are areas that would be impacted positively to a greater degree by a new school, this affects every child in the city. Because at some point soon, we will not be able to house the children that we have, even with all the portables that we have in use at the current time. So those are a couple of options, and I think the rest of our evening is going to be directed toward any comments that you may have or questions that you may have regarding this. And then I think our last order of business will return to Brenda Williams, and we're going to distribute a survey for you to express your opinion in writing on some of these issues, and she'll explain how you can get back to us or how you can get it to your neighbors and others who may have a similar interest. So, going back to Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Dr. Superintendent. So we're going to pass this mic around as people have questions, and we will try to answer them as best we can. I know there are a lot of moving pieces here, and this is, we haven't done this in a long time, and I know things were done potentially. We haven't built a new school here in a very, very long time, and things were done potentially different back then. But I think, as you heard what the superintendent went through, what Mr. Ireland went through, this has been vetted, a lot of options have been checked out. We know we have a problem, and the clock is ticking. So, I don't know who would like to ask any questions? Good.
My name is Kimberly Eaton. I currently work at Marvin Elementary School, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, your residents. The campus is really beautiful in the sense that students get to spend some recess time, and the entire building is built in the sense that you can look out and you can see the environment around you. So most classrooms have some sort of pastoral, sort of bucolic scene where you can see nature. Just a very brief thing. I, as a student, as a child, I went to Longridge School in Stamford, which was in North Stamford, and our science program was built around the river behind the school. And so I got to go outside with my science teacher, and she would point out all the different animals and creatures and plants, and we would bring them inside as samples and do research, and it was a wonderful playscape that also afforded us an understanding of our natural environment. And she also made sure we understood that we were part of the natural environment, and as an adult, I am always looking to give children an opportunity to be involved in that. Now, I liked the idea of the first plan, which would, I think, from what I understand, Columbus would come here, and this would be part of their experience. I also know Columbus School to be a hot school, which means that they use higher order learning, and art is incorporated in all of the curriculum. So I'm wondering if there is a way to include, to keep Columbus's focus in the way that it is a hot school, but also to encourage that experience where kids get to go outside, because the more, Norwalk is growing. That's a good thing. But the compromise is there are less and less spaces for children to go outside and play. I personally was partially feral. In the summertime, I might say, go outside, we're done. And there was environment for me to go outside and play, and it was safe. It is not that way so much for many of us. And if the school has an environment where there's a wetland, and you can go out and learn and not be afraid of nature, and have that be part of something that you experience, how is that as an architect? How are you able to do that? Another part of that for me, I'm sorry I'm talking so fast, I hope you can incorporate all of this, is I spent some time at Walnut Beach. I don't know if any of you know where that is. It's up 95 going north off exit 34. It's a state park. There is a wetland and marsh there that city has preserved by creating like a walkway over the marsh so that you can walk and observe the natural environment. I'm wondering if that is something that those designs that we just kind of heard about briefly would incorporate, because I think that's so important for young children. We don't seem to have that. Long Ridge, where I went to school in Stanford, was a pre-K through 8 school. And one of the things that was really cool is that when I got there in 6th grade, when I would do my science programs, I would then be able to go and share the knowledge that I got with the pre-K, kindergarten, first graders sometimes, depending on what my teacher said. And so we were peer learners. So there's just a lot of layers that could occur. And I'm wondering if that perspective is included in the physical designs of the school, and if that's something that has been part of what we've been thinking about. Thank you.
Okay. I think looking at, having had many meetings with Mr. Ireland and also looking at it, I'm sure he'd be happy to come speak. I think the 2 things I'll say quickly is we have talked about building a bridge, just like you were talking about, over the wetland areas. It's not a very substantial area, and because it's been filled on either side, it's not the most alive wetland. But I think one thing we have talked about, which you might find of interest, is, as we go up and with the roof garden, that could be, I had Norwalk Rose talking to me saying they'd like to come and sponsor a whole growing experience up there. There's been, there are going to be amazing views from up there, actually. And you might, I know the superintendent was talking to the Maritime Center about programs in different places, and maybe this would be a place where you would connect with the sound. So I think there are a lot of opportunities along those lines. We would be incorporated for sure. And the next question.
Over here.
Yes. Mr. C.
I just had a question because at a lot of meetings leading up to this, I heard that no decision has been made, but a lot of this and like the walkthrough, it seems like this is like the only site that's really, like one of the only sites that's being looked at, and it seems like it's like a plan for this school. So is this something that's gonna happen with this school here, or like what's going on?
Well, as you know, the political process is such, the way our charter is set up, and the mayor here, I'm sure, could explain to us further, is that, the Board of Ed is going to look, and we're going to, we're vetting these different ideas. We're trying to find, something that's viable, that would meet the needs that we're trying to address. And we're having a survey, we'd like everyone to partake in. It will be on paper, it will also be online. And eventually, the Board of Ed will make a recommendation to the city, and then it will need to go through the processes of the city. There are various committees that would have to go through, the full council, and then eventually the Board of Estimate, and to be incorporated in the city's budget for going forward. So it's not a decision we're going to make on our own. This is going to be a team effort. And I think the only thing the Board of Ed needs to do is, you're seeing these different options. We're trying to get public input so we can figure out what is best to meet our educational needs, which is what we're elected as board members to represent, as well as what would best meet the community's needs. One thing we didn't touch on here, 2 things I'd like to address as part of this is, one, this plan in this building, there would be a community room with access from outside, so it could be used after hours. The school would not need to be open. That's been part, we've been talking to Mr. Allen about that since the first day we met. So that would definitely be part of it. The second thing is, as the superintendent said, this is going to be, we're working on a district of choice, and that's embedded in our strategic operating plan. There are 1,375 students south of Martin Luther King Boulevard, basically from Washington Avenue down all the way to Manresa. And there are 1,375 pre-K through 8 students. And as you heard, these 2 schools are going to build, basically not quite roughly 900 places. So a number of the students who live in South Norwalk are still going to go to other schools. You're going to have a choice. Do you want to go to school in South Norwalk? Do you want to go to another school? And we're going to be a district of choice. We're trying to get there now. Right now, we're limited because our capacity is so constrained. I hope that answers the question. Sir.
Good evening, Steve Ferguson. I live 1 street over on this side, so I'll be impacted. It's a good, great, we have it. I also serve on the planning side of the city, and also have a child on Columbus, so I'm hit a little bit. The doctor made a question, made a statement regarding the reduction in the transportation costs per year by $8 million. I'm a numbers guy, so what would be the number if this was taking effect? Would that number drop significantly? We're talking about $1 million, $2 million, or we're talking about just nothing?
Well, it'll drop a little, and it will not go up. So just to give you a perspective on this, the average school district in Connecticut buses about 50% of the students. And most of this in the districts that are not cities are simply students that are a considerable distance from the school. In our case, we're transporting about 80% of our students, and that's where the $8 million cost comes from. So there would be, let's assume that if we had 2 new schools in South Norwalk, one in Magnet, one a neighborhood school. Let's assume that 50% of those students, or about 500 students, would walk to school, or at least parents would have that choice of choosing that school and having to walk to school. That would be a reduction in busing. It would not be significant. Maybe we would go from 8 million to 7 million. But more importantly, it would stop the increase in busing that the district has experienced every year. And the reason why busing is increasing is because South Norwalk, which doesn't have a school, is our fastest growing area. So we have more and more students from the South Norwalk area, which is contributing to this. Now again, we're educators. Our mission in life is to provide an excellent education to our students. And it does bother us to see this incredible outlay of funds that cannot be used for educational purposes.
Another one.
Hi, I'm a Columbus parent, and I'm wondering if you consider having 3 sections per grade. Right now, we don't live in South Norwalk, and I'm concerned about my preschooler even making it into the lottery, especially if you're going to be opening it up to more walkers and less people from elsewhere. And my other concern with it is that they're going to be going from such a small school with only 2 classes per grade, and then we're going to plop them into Norwalk High, and it's going to be such a disconnect from what they're used to. I'm worried that they're not going to be prepared.
So your question deals with why a K-8 school could not be 3 sections?
Correct.
Yeah, so the site, it's possible. It requires a 3rd story, which is generally not desirable in a school. And the site is more adapted in both cases. Both sites are more adapted to a 2-section K-8 or a 3-section K-5. These are, we have about 15 buildable acres here. We need about 10 of those. So you can't go out too much further because you have all the green space requirements and the bus turnoffs and the parking and all of that involved. So that was really a determination based upon the building space. So The same is similar to where the current Columbus is today. We have 17 classrooms, we need 18 classrooms, and 18 classrooms will constitute a K-5 school with 3 sections or a K-8 school with 2 sections. So it's a nature of how much space we have. As was pointed out, we're a city, we don't have huge tracts of land, and really just a space consideration. Now, I want to point out, though, that 2 things you said. One is if you have a child at Columbus, you would be covered by sibling preference in the lottery relative to your younger children, okay? And we would do that for all families. And secondly, you would have a choice whether you went to middle school, you had your child go to middle school, or stayed at Columbus. Okay, so it would not be a commitment that you're making if you would prefer one of our regular middle schools. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. We do have some evidence in the national research that suggests that students that go to small schools who are in small, personalized environments, where they have close relationships with the teachers and with each other, that they tend to do better no matter where they go to school next. So I'm not sure I can rely on any empirical studies that would determine that one way or the other. It seems to be that smallness and personalization and being part of a tight-knit community seems to matter most when you're youngest.
Thank you. We have a question, Ms. Davis.
Yes. With this being a neighborhood school, sitting in this community, we in the community utilize this school here and also playground area and stuff. So my concern is if this becomes a neighborhood school, are our community or surrounding community, will they be able to still utilize the services here? The playground area, such as the playground area. Because right now, there's a problem over at Columbus School where parents are coming in from Columbus School and don't want their kids playing with neighborhood kids and trying to run them from the playground area. So I want to know if that's going to happen over this area.
I can just tell you as a Board of Ed member, parks are owned by, the playgrounds are not owned by the school system, they're owned by the city, so everyone's allowed to use them. Residents of the city of Norwalk, neighborhood people, as well as people who don't live in Norwalk.
Okay,
they're
well,
public property.
Ask Columbus School because there have been problems over there, so ask the principal and them over at Columbus School. It is a problem.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, everyone. You don't know me, I'm Mr. T. I'm the principal, proud principal of Columbus Magnet School. And thank you very much, everyone, for having us. First of all, I just want to clarify that statement. Our parents are the most welcoming group of people I've ever come across, and we do not run children or people outside of our community.
Hold on,
It is
let me clarify
it is
something
our
before you
community,
go.
ma'am, yes, ma'am. It is our community, it's a shared space, and if anything, we're trying very hard to incorporate the children who don't attend Columbus Magnet School, but who live across the street and around the neighborhood, so that they can care for their property as well, because it's a shared space.
Okay, I understand it's a shared space, but you also have the YMCA, and I know what I'm talking about because I have known people that work for the YMCA, and the YMCA has been telling the staff to not let the neighborhood kids, because the parents, some of the parents, I didn't say all, some of the parents don't want their kids playing with the neighborhood kids. I know what I'm talking about because I have family members that work there, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yes, when you have children who come to school, to the Columbus Magnet School site, and they're older kids, and they're playing roughly or cursing or behaving in an untoward manner, yes, we don't want our little children to be exposed to that. And so we do ask that they excuse themselves until after our kids leave and then afterwards, it's open to everyone. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We don't want to get exposed to that.
Okay,
But again, you're not an exclusive school or very inclusive
Okay, you
community.
can say what you need to say, but
Thank
I'm
you very
telling you
much.
what I know.
And one more thing, in terms of this whole discussion, I deal with facts.
You can say what you need.
And there are certain facts out there. Fact number one, Columbus Magnet School will be a magnet school. Fact number two, we're going to continue to maintain our integrated approach in the mold of Bank Street College of Education and the HOTS program. We're getting lots and lots of support from the board, and we really appreciate that. And our goal is to grow that program. Fact number three, it sounds like at some point, we're going to move out of the building. Whether we return to the building or stay here permanently, we're going to move at some point. And fact number four, if we are going to move, I just want to make sure that we're going to work with the people who are not happy with what's going on. Because I don't want to move into a community with people who are not comfortable. Because again, this is a shared space. This is not Columbus Magnet School taking over. I'm not comfortable with the idea of moving into a place, and yet people feel that they're not part of the shared space. And so I would hope that if this does come to fruition, that we're able to work with those who are not happy with the solutions right now, so that we could work together, so in a few years, we are all sharing space peacefully together. Because again, we're a community.
My question, if this becomes a high school that Columbus Magnet has running over there, if they come here into this neighborhood with all of the people that are within walking distance, and it's a really great program, and it's a really hot program, are the people that live here in all of the buildings around this, in the walk distance, guaranteed to be able to attend this school? Say they really want, it's a hot program, and this turns out to be one of those great things that we're all hoping can be pulled off for the kids. Are the people that live here going to be guaranteed that they will be able to be members of this community 100% in their school and in their neighborhood? Because with the busing in Columbus Magnet and moving up to here, Columbus is coming up to here, and that's a great school too. But it's also a magnet school, and then their sibling, and the siblings can join after they get rights to be in the school. And I'm just worried that maybe some kids, because of ratios, are going to be taken from here, because this could be a great deal here. And it's about time something like that happened for this neighborhood. But what is the guarantee that the people that are invested in this neighborhood are going to actually be able to attend, and that 20% aren't going to be forced bust out? It's happened all the time in different scenarios.
I'm going to let the superintendent answer this question, but I will tell you, we've talked about what our options are, and when they built, I think a good example for us all to consider is what they did in the Cove neighborhood of Stanford when they built Rogers Magnet School. And they came up with a formula that there were a certain number of seats for children from the community, and then there were a certain number of seats for kids from other places, because that's a state inter-magnet school.
Is that why Columbus is going to be the jumping point to come here, so that stays as an open enrollment? Because really that sounds more like an open enrollment on a lottery system.
No, so Columbus is in the mix because Columbus's building was one of the three that was designated for renovation as new because it's in such bad condition. Okay, so the other two were Jefferson and West Rocks. We have a responsibility to all of those schools. That responsibility in Jefferson also has to go hand in hand with reducing the enrollment at Jefferson so that it can be a neighborhood school again, and have those students served by the building that is on the grounds. So let me address though your question about would there be a guarantee for neighborhood students. So we've looked in the last few weeks, we've looked at practices of magnet schools throughout the state. Right? And there are schools, as Mr. Vargas pointed out, that give preference in the lottery to neighborhood students who could walk to school. Okay, so that's one way that we can do it. Stanford, I'm sorry?
In a magnet school.
Yes, in magnets.
Right.
Okay, so it's called neighborhood preference in the magnet lottery.
Yeah.
So whether or not all the students could be accommodated, I don't know. We would have to simulate that, model it, and see.
Okay, I have one caveat to that.
Yeah, but I have to give you the rest of this explanation. I'm sorry?
They're districted for their neighborhoods. These people, I don't think that this area has ever had the chance to set up to begin with. Because I went to school way back before the busing to start, and they haven't had a chance since to be their own district. Will they be their own district? Because Jefferson, you're saying, is going back to being neighborhood school, and I understand that, I believe in that fully. But it's districted, so.
If you wanted to do that, you would need to have option B, which is a K-5 neighborhood school on this site feeding to Rockland Middle School. Okay, so that's basically option B. I did want to add, though, to your first part of your question, that Stanford has come up a number of times, and they've had extensive experience with magnet schools. In several of their magnet schools, they give preference to people in income-restricted housing. And again, this is just another way of ensuring that people who are in proximity to the school, who could walk to the school, who have vested interest in the school because they live here, have a chance to attend the school.
One last thing.
And I would just say to you that we could do that very easily and still stay within the 56% minority balance that currently exists at Columbus. It's just that we would give preference to the folks that are close by.
Right, but if this community has a chance to have a neighborhood school and not have to redistrict themselves, is that going to be something to be written into it? Because I'm very concerned for what's happening to this area, because even every time they get their feet settled, something else happens. It never grabs steady ground.
If you felt that way, you might favor option B more than option A.
Okay, I think Mr. Mosby has a question. He's next.
Good afternoon tonight. My name is John Mosby.
Yes.
My name is John Mosby. I've been living in Norwalk over there. My name is John Mosby. I've been living on 15 Ashland Avenue for 40-some years. And I'm here tonight to tell the community and the public the truth. For too long in this country, we've been playing games with our children and our grandchildren. And I want to say to you all tonight, I know this community better than anyone. When this school was built, I was here. And this was one of the beautiful schools in any town. We had some beautiful kids here in this town. The problem is, I want to share this part. In the time when this school was built, and I'm not going to sugarcoat everybody, know I'm a straight shooter. I got kids and grandkids mixed with Hispanics and all. I work with black, white, and we had a beautiful community when I come here. I want to tell the truth, we had over 17,000 kids here. We had 31 schools. 31 schools. I worked in every one of them. I was here to do for 30. I went to every one of them. What happened was, and I'm going to say I don't want to see it happen again. What they did was, all the schools right here, and we're going to tell the truth, was nearly all white right here. Unit code was almost all white. What happened when blacks moved in, they moved out. And I got to this system, I was in this suit in 1968 when we went to court. What happened was, the judge was right. He said you cannot have an all-black school. I think the city fought us in this. We lost because he said that the Black Shield wanted to move us kids out to a better school. That's why we lost our schools down here. Now you're talking about coming back again. That's fine. I agree with the superintendent. We need a neighborhood school here. Not only one, we need 2 or 3. And I want to go for the record, so I'm going to be very brief tonight on one home. I went and told Dr. Mark, I told Mr. River, and I told you, Dr. I said, please don't close, fix them down, because they don't need these schools. They all need to know it. And I'm going to say here tonight, in this country, we not going to get together, because I think the law is being violated. You just can't have partnership and leave the community out. Now y'all get mad with Miss Detroit, whatever, she telling the truth. You don't put us on no list. When you coming down in our neighborhood, we are not on no PTA, we don't own nothing. This is our neighborhood. We should have white here, Hispanic. Another thing I'm gonna say, Hispanics are not represented. They don't have Hispanics on no community. The majority of the kids coming in here now. And I'm going to tell you right now, we can stop all those children going, and I'm not going to knock out church because I love them all. I work with my church. I serve committed with my church. But I want to say to my church, when we lose a lot of black kids to this table. Y'all don't believe that. And I look at the big record the other day, the Hispanics, and then most of my kids are Spanish. They're coming here, they love to have a good education. But we want to see some of them and us on these boards. You just cannot run to the leaders all the time to lead the community out. We want to have a say. And then when we speak of it, it's the one that's out. When you bring other groups in there, and I think the world, I don't want to start no trouble. But we don't have no say in our own neighborhood. We don't have no say. Now that is discrimination. And I want to say for the end of it, that's big. We got to sit down and have a home. Now you take in Fox Run, Bridge, all the schools up north, up town, they got the PTAs speak for the people. Down here we don't have no that. That's why the people get supposed to need to bring people down, we gonna speak for you. You can't do that. You should have people like me with a good board to bring our kids together. Because we want diversity in this country. And whether we like it or not, I'm gonna say this for the end. Whether we like it or not, that's why you see the country done. The black and Hispanic gonna be the majority in this country. They're gonna be driving all the trains and all the boats and they're gonna be the big boys. But we don't want to face it, but we got to face it. And let's stop this nonsense and get together and love each other, love white and black. And we get together and listen to us and stop the shit game playing with our children. And let's go for you 9 years old. Because if you don't, it ain't gonna work what you want to. And one more thing I'm gonna say, this thing about, we give you a choice. Yeah, but you pick the best kids and leave other kids behind. That ain't right. I have 2 grandkids, all treated like a dog in the school system. Because they were special ed. I wouldn't do hell. Got to play all over my head. No more break. I'm looking for the break. That's all right. It's not right. What we should do is have all these children get an equal education. Thank you very much.
Brenda, then the other Brenda, then Williams. Wait, hold on, she's first, then you'll be next.
So with the increase of the school, how would Title I funds be distributed?
Okay, well, I'll let the superintendent, what about Title I funds? How would it be distributed?
Distributed with the new schools? How would Title I funds?
Okay, well, I'll let the superintendent answer that question. Okay.
So, in our system currently, about half of our children qualify for free reduced lunch. And that's the proxy for having a lower income. The other half, the other 50%, do not, so they would be considered to have a higher income. So any school in our system today that is over 50% of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch becomes a Title I school. and we just cut the pie differently. Now, this year, for example, we made Title I funds available to the middle school, to the 6 through 8 schools. And that was in anticipation that at some point in the future, we may have a K-8 school that would be in that situation as well. So Ponus and West Rocks are now Title I schools. We've got 5 elementary Title I schools. So in terms of any new school that would be built, based upon the students that attended, if it was over 50% of students qualifying for free or reduced lunch, it would be a Title I school.
One more, just have one more, sorry.
Yes, please go ahead.
How will this new school affect the 99 district children?
I think our thinking is that we don't want the 99 district to exist anymore. You know, we want all kids to be districted to a neighborhood school, and if you look at a map, which you come up afterwards, I can show you this patchwork of South Norwalk, and you have the 99, what we call undesignated, you know, the kids that aren't designated so they school. But then outside of that, in South Norwalk, you have 8 different schools that kids are assigned to. So if you're over on Mack Street, you go to Cranberry. You're down here, you go to Kendall. And I think we would clean all of that up. That's a legacy from 50 years ago that has never been addressed. We have, as a board, have not discussed this, but I think implicit in our plan is that would all get cleaned up. Okay?
Okay, I'm confused. I hear that you want to have a neighborhood school down South Norwalk. But then I hear that you want to build a school for Columbus or, what do you want to do? Because it sounds like you're trying to put 2 plans into one.
We're going to do both.
Okay.
I mean,
what
our
it
plan
sounds
is to
like.
do both.
Because if you're going to do a neighborhood school down here, then it should be specifically for the children that live in Route 4, which for me, that would be discrimination, okay? That would be segregation, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not really liking the fact that you're giving the Columbus school parents a choice of where they want to be. Either they want to have a Columbus school as it exists renovated or come here as a new school. And this is what the superintendent presented to them at Columbus School. I heard it with my own ears.
I know, that's
Okay.
what we just talked about now, option A and B.
Right, but that's not right. They should not have the right to say they want to have a school down here at Nathaniel Ely without the people from Nathaniel Ely being at the table. That is not right.
They're not making the final decision.
Well, that's not what the superintendent said today. He said they will be making the final decision. I was there and I heard him say it.
You got about 80% of it right, so I thank you for that. The same presentation that we made tonight was made at the Columbus School. Parents who were here will vouch for that. Columbus School has to be renovated as new. So does West Rocks, so does Jefferson. We have to have swing space to do that, right? So as Mr. T said earlier, if you are going to maintain that site as Columbus School, then you have to build swing space here first, move the school there here during construction, and then move it back. And the other alternative is to use that school as the neighborhood school and have the Columbus School here. Now, as I pointed out in those advantages under each plan, there are different advantages. One of the advantages of having a K-5 school here is that, you know, we've got the connection with Groton, which is one of the few places where we have some flexibility in terms of space. And if you were to have a neighborhood school where Columbus is currently, it helps the Jefferson situation a great deal, because children in that neighborhood should not be being bused to Jefferson. Students in the King Kennedy complex should not be being bused to Jefferson. It has no rationality whatsoever. And so, you know, again, we have to approach some normalcy here. You know, every neighborhood, every parent deserves a neighborhood school. People make housing decisions around whether or not there is a school. Your property is more valuable if there's a school near you. These are neighborhood decisions, and You know, this 99 situation was mentioned. I hope we stop using that term. That is a pejorative term. And do you know where it comes from? In our student information system, there is a code. It's 99 for students who don't have a school. It's the same code we use for homeless students. And there should be nobody in any school district in Connecticut in 2016 where you have families that are not assigned to a school, where the family cannot predict, by living here, I'm going to this school. That is a fundamental right that every parent has and should expect from their school district.
We're going to work our way around the room.
I have almost a comment. There's a project, I can't think of the name of it, right next to Tracy School, and those kids go to Silver Mountain. Okay, so that's the same, there's no rationale with that.
We do know that. That wasn't ours, that was from years ago, and we want to fix that.
Okay, but I'm just saying, he was saying that there's no rationale.
There's no rationale to that either.
Okay.
This is the answer I would
It's
give.
all over Norwalk, but I'm thinking, people do not want that school down here. They do not want to
Well,
see.
that's why we're doing this survey, because we want to find out what everybody wants. And the survey, you can do it in print or you can do it online. And we hope to get as much participation as possible. We've got hard copy here. We want to tell your friends about it. We're going to publicize it. And we want to get as much input from as many people as possible. I think our next speaker is over there. A question?
Good. I don't live in Norwalk, but I work here, which is far more important than living here. And I serve some of the greatest parents in the city. You mentioned the preschool and what we do and what we offer, but when you gave your options for building, you did not give options for where we should go when you bring Columbus here, because we fill up this school. And we fill it up to capacity, and we serve this community well. So where do we go when you bring?
We're going to build a second building next door. You're staying here.
This stays here. Yeah. But you said you'd be moving people in this building while Columbus was renovated.
No.
That's what you said.
We would build a new school next door, and that would be our, what they call swing space. So we would build a new school. People from Columbus, all the students and staff would come to the new building next door. And they would be there, and then they'd either stay there, or once the renovation was finished, they'd go back over to Concord Street.
So I think the point of clarification that we need to make relative to your question is that in either option A or option B, this school would remain as a preschool center. And we are building next to it to enhance the Ely campus. So picture a campus with 2 schools, tennis courts, you know, a kind of an educational campus here, but it does not take this building. Are we all on the same page? Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
And I will say, maybe we did consider at one point, we did look into the option of rebuilding this building, so to speak, into a new school. And we did approach the state of Connecticut because there were some restrictions that would prevent us from doing that. We spent all summer working on it with lawyers, and we found out we kind of could, but it really wasn't ideal. And so we've passed on that option. But that's why when my introductory remarks, I said we looked at a lot of options. That was an option we looked at, and in the end proved to be a dead end, and we've hit a lot of dead ends. And what we've presented to you tonight are what our real viable options are. Yes?
Okay, my question is, how will the teachers be chosen for the school, and will it be a diverse staff?
Well, I guess I can turn this to the superintendent, but I think we hire new teachers. Just if it was coming from Columbus, obviously it would be those teachers would be coming here. And if they stayed here, that would be the case. And wherever we have the new school, be it at this site or on the old Columbus site, we would hire teachers just as we do now. And we have been making a big effort to improve our diversity rankings, but it's a small pool, and we're working actually with the State Board of Education as well as our Regional Education Service Center to get a more diverse group of students to become teachers. But it's a really tough challenge, and there are some programs now at the high school level to try to encourage high school students to become teachers, and it's, hopefully the program's gaining momentum, but it's a big challenge, but we're trying.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good evening.
Everyone's good, right?
Yes.
First, let me welcome you. I am Monisha Gibson. I am the director of the Maritime Odyssey Preschool. So welcome to the Maritime Odyssey Preschool. I serve the greatest parents in this community, and I assure you that this opportunity to improve and provide a high-quality school in this area is a fantastic idea. I was sitting here and I was thinking back to about 15 years ago when I had a great privilege of speaking alongside the late Coretta Scott King, John Lewis, and David Lebanon Lewis. And we're all talking about the same things here, high-quality education. Doesn't matter if it's down in South Norwalk, doesn't matter if it's over by Silvermine, we want high-quality education for our children. We have already, this building, those of you who do not know, we opened 10 weeks ago. For those of you who come through, it's a vast improvement of what it used to be, but we absolutely love the work that we do. I have the great privilege of partnering with the Maritime Aquarium, as well as Grace Baptist Church, and also the fabulous grassroots tennis. When you bring your resources together to promote quality education, we can do great things. This is not a black issue, this is not a white issue, this is not a rich issue or a poor issue. This is about providing quality education for our children. Now, what you need to know is that the quality has to start at early childhood. Guess what? We need them the first 5 years. That's where we need them. So, although we're talking about some grades that are further down the road, we need to get them early. That's where a lot of that acquisition happens. And so, we are here doing that now with 200 children. And our parents who are here, I love you guys for being here, I know it's late night. We have to keep the momentum. We have to focus on how we're going to get this done so we can get it done well. There are certainly issues that surround how we get there, but we can all agree that we need to get there. There's nothing scary about this area. I heard people talking in the hallway. We don't get in the neighborhood. There's nothing scary about this area. There are lots of things that happen in the state of Connecticut that have been devastating, that have not happened in neighborhoods like this. Okay? Really channel our energy. I'm looking forward to working with the fabulous principal over and we have the privilege to work with grassroots. And the Maritime Aquarium has brought high-quality services. We have an on-site science lab for children. We are a great community. We really have to get it together. We are the role models for our children. It is good for your children to be in diverse backgrounds. It's good for us to experience that. And I'm assure you, if we work together, this plan and the proposal is going to be phenomenal. So God bless y'all. And,
Thank you, Manisha, very much. I know we said we'd be done by 8 o'clock, but we still have a little bit of time here, so where are you going there, Brenda? Oh, actually, that young lady did ask for it. She had her hand up a while ago.
Good evening. I am a mother of children that attend Norwalk Public Schools. I am also a mother that lives in this immediate vicinity, Ruger Courts. You're saying, I know you don't like the word 99, but that's when I moved here, that's what I was classified as this being. So my thing is, if you're saying 99 is no longer going to exist, but you're also saying that our kids are not guaranteed to come to this school, how are we no longer going to be a 99 district? And how is it that you're saying you're going to build a neighborhood school at Columbus, guaranteed, which means our kids are still going to be bused because there's no way that they can walk from here to where Columbus is. Well, I wouldn't allow my child. I don't know if anybody else will.
Well, my math isn't very strong, but I am a mathematician, but I think they said the distance from here to Columbus is the current Columbus site is 3,000 feet. If your kids are in K through 3, if you live half a mile or more from school, you get guaranteed bus transportation. So I'm not sure how that quite pans out from Ruger Court.
So what I'm saying is you're not fixing a problem here. You're still gonna be busing our kids to another school.
Right, but they're not getting bused to Cranberry. They're on a bus for 5 minutes, not 45.
So just on the 99 issue, we do want to remove that. And
But
if
then our
you look
kids have to
at
have an
where
actual
the
district
children
school.
are now in South Norwalk, about half of them are actually assigned to schools that are on other parts, in other parts of town. The so-called 99s are kind of the other half of South Norwalk. And it's interspersed. If you look at our maps in color-coded fashion, you'll see it's like a crazy quilt, because you'll have a section that's assigned to Rowayton School, or a section assigned to Cranberry School, or a section assigned to Silver Mine. And then you'll see another section that is unassigned, right? So we do want to get rid of that. There is also going to be a choice for parents. If you are a family that is attending one of those schools now, obviously you have your choice of staying or continuing your siblings there. But for the students, as Mr. Marvin said, in a half-mile walk zone, we're hoping this will provide many more opportunities for parents to choose a school in their community, for students to walk to school. But when we're done with the districting of this, the goal is not to have unassigned students. Because, what happens to the unassigned students is every summer, the parent gets a letter, the kindergarten parent gets a letter that says, this is where you're going to school.
Thank you. Brenda? I think there's another woman in the back corner there. Watson's?
Hi, my name is Shirley Daniel. I attend Brighton High School, and I'm a resident of River Court. My question is, how will this affect my community? I hear all this stuff about how you're going to build this wonderful, miraculous school back here, but how will it affect my community directly? How will it affect the children in my community? Okay, so, all right, per se, you put all the children from River Court, let them go to this school back here. Well, what will that do? Did you think about that? Like, how will it affect the kids? If you just put them in a school that's in their community, how will it affect them? So when they go to like a high school, now it's like a different culture, it's like a culture shock to them.
All our schools, under state law, and I think federal law too, all our schools have to be integrated. So it's not like all the students here going to this new school here would all just be from here. And would be, I don't know if you spoke at Grace Calvary Baptist Church, but I know there was a student from Brian McMahon who kind of asked the same question and had gone to Rowayton School and had liked that diversity. And I think that's why I said earlier, our goal, and currently we're working on, it's not even just a goal, it's really our plan, is to be a district of choice. So you would have the choice to live in a school, and there are a lot of positives to going to a school right in your neighborhood, where your mom or your dad can come talk to your teacher, can pick you up after school, you can partake in preschool activities, after school activities, tutoring, enrichment, sports, whatever's going on at your specific school, which obviously is a lot harder to do. If you're living here and you're going to a Cranberry school, the odds of your parent coming by, or if you're sick and picking you up, whatever, the odds are a lot not in your favor. But I think because it's a district of choice, you could go to your neighborhood school, or maybe you'd like to go to the bilingual mano a mano program at Silver Mine for whatever, because you want to be bilingual in Spanish. Or you might want to go to a science magnet school, which is what we're talking about trying to build at PONUS. There are going to be choices. And just like when you go to high school, you won't necessarily have to go to Brian McMahon. You could go to the Early College Academy at Norwalk High, or we're going to try to build a journalism media program at Norwalk High as well. You might choose to go to that and just go to the regular program at Brian McMahon. You're going to have choices, is what's going to come down to.
Good afternoon, my name is Newly Boulevard. As a kid who's lived in River Court for a long time, I wouldn't say that's the safest place. So how would you keep these kids safe?
Well, I know that topic has come up, and we have investigated that, and as Ms. Gibson, there she is, there are 280 kids come to school here every day. And those kids are, we're not aware of there being any problems. We spoke to the police chief, We looked at the records, and I don't think, I mean, you know, there are 280 kids here, there are teachers working here, there aren't any issues. So we don't see that as a source of concern. Maybe the site isn't used as actively as it would be if there was a full-fledged school here, but other than that, you know, we really don't see that as a problem.
Not only are there 200 kids here now, there's been that many kids here for the past 20 years. And, I mean, come on, let's like look at the reality of it. This isn't something new with kids here. They've been here for years. My girlfriend worked in the school for 20 years. With people whose kids are in, right there, Ms. Lewis worked here forever. You know, there's always been kids here. Why would it even be a question that, you know, because it's Ruger Court next door? We need to get the stigma from that and just, like, come on, it's ridiculous. It's look at everybody who came out tonight. I've been coming to the meetings about redirect and everything. This is the most people I've seen. You guys tripled to come out to find out about the new school. Just keep coming to the meetings. Keep asking questions. I mean, this is something that we need. We're all scared of change, but we need it. We're busting at the seams. We have tons of kids coming in, and they're gonna not have a school to come to if we don't do something.
I'd like to say something. I think you're on point, but I think this process needs to happen. And I think this should not be the end of it. Because as you can see, there are a lot of people who are concerned, and I think there are a lot of teachers here as well. So there are some concerns in the community, and there are issues that need to be addressed, such as racial balance. I hear you mention school of choice, and how would that, I mean, that's what we have talked about, how does that eventually affect racial balance? And that's a question that needs to be addressed soon. And I think rather than just talking about bricks and mortar, but something more important is curriculum. And I know at some point, I think I saw something about maybe some suggestions of different curriculum. And so we have to be mindful. We need to continue the dialogue. And so no question is a stupid question. And so I appreciate the young person, and I appreciate the young person. But I think we do need a school in our community. What that school will look like, feel like, what are they going to produce? Because we can just have a school, and we can be a turnaround school within a year if we don't get it right, if we don't address issues like curriculum in a timely manner.
Well, that's kind of what they're asking from us.
And I think it would be helpful, even if, and I heard someone else say this, and it might be Mr. Mosby, about possibly having a committee of folks that the Board of Ed can look to, because we're the people that are going to be affected by that. It's our children. And so this is a necessary process. You're a volunteer?
I volunteer.
I volunteer.
I volunteer.
What I'm saying is that a committee should form individuals that understand the value and the needs long and short term of the here and the overall of the
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
Yeah.
I'll speak loud. I actually also serve on a board in Norwalk.
Yeah.
I'm actually a board member for a school called Side by Side. When it was chartered 20 years ago, the charter wanted to have it 30% black, 30% Hispanic, 30% white. Now it's 70% black. And the reason why it's that is because when you guarantee your younger sibling coming in to the school, it kind of pushes the actual racial barriers. So you might start with a good idea, as Ms. Johnson, a good idea about good balance and quality of education. But after a couple of years, things might change. So the most important thing is get the committee together who understands that fabric, to discuss that on a regular basis so that you won't have these questions coming back.
Well, all I'd say is, side by side.
I'm not pushing back.
I hear you. Now, side by side's a charter school. They operate under different regulations than we do. We could never be a 70%. We could never have a school that was 70% black. So, if you look, we have to look at our racial balance of total minority versus white. That's how the state looks at it. That's what the rules are. We're a majority minority district now. So all our schools are going to look that way. And they already, by and large, they all do.
Cranberry does it.
So I don't.
Cranberry does it.
I understand what you're saying, and I think
So let's
there's
talk
no
about that
reason.
for a second. Let's talk about that for a second. Having a committee formed that can to discuss these kind of questions or potential situations or being peppered with different questions. We decide to have a committee to address it to you, you know.
Right, but I think what you have to appreciate also is that it's a series of steps, right? So right now, our goal is we need to have a proposal for a building, and we need to get it approved by the city and the Board of Estimate and the Common Council, and then we need to file this form with the state by June 30th.
I agree with
That's
you.
our goal.
I agree with you, but we are the city. You must say the city. We are.
I'm talking about the city, the mayor,
Okay,
the
mayor.
Common Council, and the Board of Estimate.
Okay.
They appropriate the money. So we need to go through that process. And we need to get this approved by all the powers that be and submitted to the state by June 30th. That's our goal. And then once that proposal is in with the state, we have a year of planning. And a committee such as you talk about would be appropriate at that point in time.
Okay, folks, we're running out of time. We're gonna go to this lady and then back to you, and then I think we'll try to get one more in, but then we're gonna have to wrap up. We're almost at 8 o'clock.
2016. So I'm Marvin Simon. We're ready to stay. And as Lisa said, we're very open. I'm actually coming from a Polish Spanish family. And as Misha said, we're open to share the space. There is no problem with that. But as the Odyssey mom, a lot of parents have come to me and said, are they closing the school? This is, as you said, it's 10 weeks. So you're guaranteed that Odyssey is not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
Because we just, like, my kids are only 2, and she said, but we feel like education is strong, have to be strong since little. And my kids are potentially, like, your plans sound good, but I'm worried for my parents now that are asking questions for their school year.
No, I mean, we're really hoping, our plan would be that that your children would go to one of these new schools. I mean, that's our goal. And the programs here, from Head Start to school readiness to the toddler program, would all continue to be here. This building will stay untouched.
So Odyssey will stay here.
Exactly.
We don't gonna have there was a school that closed before and parents were notified a week. So.
That had nothing to do with the Board of Education.
Okay, just making sure my other parents are happy.
Yep. Okay, Brenda, you're in charge. Where the mic's going?
Boy, I just want to say, my name is Ernie Goose, and I'm really confused here a little bit about your urgency of building a new school. When you look around and the questions that are being asked of the parents and the people that are in this community can't even don't even know the questions, don't know the answers. Have you not put something together to notify these people, let them know what's going on? This is why you're getting the questions that you're getting right now, because they're not aware of what's going around in their community, around them. So, but you're also saying it's an urgency to put this building together. You need to educate the people first before you start building the building.
That point has come up before, and I think my response would be, it's like a chicken or the egg, which comes first? You have to have a proposal for people to respond to. You can't just in a vacuum say, oh, what should we do? That's why we went to professionals. We spent $250,000 to get their recommendation from professional architects and engineers. And then we had to look at that in the context of Norwalk, where we are, what would work, what wouldn't work. And then we went back to them, they refined them, and came up with proposals that are viable. I think if we had come to you with all sorts of crazy ideas that either legally were not possible, physically there wasn't enough room, take your pick what the problem would have been, and then we had a whole discussion, we invested all these hours, and then we came back and said, oh, we're sorry, that's not an option actually, because of some legal agreement, you would have felt like you wasted your time. So we had to do it, there was no other way, I don't think, to do it this way, is we had to come with something for the public to respond to, and that's what we're doing now. That's why we're doing these surveys, and that's what our proposal. I know you were asking about timing. We're hoping to submit a proposal to the state of Connecticut. The deadline every year is June 30th. So we are hoping to submit 1 or 2 proposals to the state, maybe 3, who knows, by June 30th, 2017. But it's just it's a concept. It's not the final by any means. Brenda, do we have, yes ma'am?
Hi, my name is Eva Balaz, and I live in South Norwalk. My children are at Columbus. My question is that I don't feel like I've heard from anyone wherever the neighborhood school goes, whether it is at Columbus site or it is another building on this site, where the rest of the racial balancing will come from. Because everyone here is saying it can't be a segregated school, but I haven't heard anything addressed that who else would be attending the neighborhood school to balance it.
Well, let me just give you some rough numbers. In all of Norwalk, we have roughly 11,500 students. Of those 11,500 students, 3,450 are white, 5,290 are Latino, and 1,950 are African American. So we have a lot of students. You couldn't make an all African American or an all Latino school if you wanted to.
What neighborhoods are you guys?
So the area, there's a whole part of Jefferson, you heard the superintendent talk about, there's a whole part of Jefferson, Golden Hill, that area, south of 95, kind of between Flax Hill and 95, that is districted to Jefferson School. And the idea is that neighborhood would be districted to the new South Norwalk School, wherever it would be, here or there. We have not run all the models. We are still in the design phase, and that is one thing. The superintendent has a team of people in central office who are going to run simulations for every school, what the racial balance would look like. And the more and more we go to schools of choice, at the end of the day, each school, under state law, it has to be somewhere between, in rough numbers, 40 and 80% non-white.
Is it right to assume, though, that all of the schools are going to be looked at for the makeup? We're talking about a group of housing right here.
I think we're not going to have a choice.
You have to. All of our schools are within racial balance guidelines now, with the exception of Jefferson, which is close to being out of compliance. But they all are. As Mr. Barber said, I've got this work group going that is simulating district lines to see what the racial composition would be. It looks like if the current Columbus site was a neighborhood school, that we might be able to accomplish that naturally, just in the immediate area. If the neighborhood school were here, we might have to extend lines in a slightly different direction as well as the center here, but it's all doable, and we can do it by simulating, right? By having a set of lines, seeing where the children are, what race and ethnicity are they, and we can tell, and then we can adjust those lines in order to get a school that's racially balanced. Now, in a choice school, that's different. We would give neighborhood preference, but we would maintain the racial balance the same as in the case of Columbus at 56%, and that has implications for the lottery and the rest of the city. So I feel fairly confident we can do this in a way that we come up with racially balanced schools and correct the one issue we have in Jefferson.
Folks, we're up against our 8 o'clock deadline. We're going to have one more question here. I would encourage the Board of Ed, if they can stay around for a few minutes afterwards. If you have some unanswered questions individually that you'd like to go up and ask, I would encourage you to do so, but we need to close up this session.
And Brenda, can you explain how people can get
as soon as we finish the last
survey?
Last question.
Very quickly, and this is a follow-up to Darlene's point. What's the timeline and, more importantly, process that the board will use to help determine what that high-quality school will look like and be in it? I mean, we've heard magnet school, we've heard a number of different things. Not talking about the Columbus school, but this new community school. For example, today, if you look in Bridgeport's newspaper, their Daily Voice, we've got a new school that's opening up in the west end of Bridgeport. It's a STEAM school, K through 8. Interesting, it's a similar neighborhood as this. Very interesting piece, though. Their process was fully inclusive of parents and community. And the reason I'm asking this question, because it isn't just a matter of, I've got a K through 8, so it's got 2 classrooms. It's all the ancillary rooms that were necessary to have the kind of program that was there that actually drew parents They would expect to draw parents from anywhere. And in fact, for the kids in that neighborhood, it would be that highly exciting school that someone could talk about. So as I understand it right now, you've got some decisions and deadlines that you're looking to do, as I understand, by December. But in terms of that high-quality school, and what will be neat, because your architect is going to have to determine from what the community says, this is what I can buy into, and this is what makes sense. Is it a 6 to 6? What other additional pieces are being given? United States Secretary of Education said, when you got kids in poverty, there's more resources that are needed than you do in a regular school. How do we get the determination now and not in June? What will that process look like to give us insurance? Because I like some of the ideas we're given that you have an advisory committee and other people able to put that together so we can come up with a school that we can all buy into.
So to answer that question, I want to go back to the gentleman's point on keeping a committee. Right? And the process for this, typically when you build a building, is the Ed Specs Committee, which would be a step in the process where we would put together community representatives, technical representatives, and so on, and specify the education program. Because, see, the building is supposed to be built around the needs of the education program, right? So that would be the next step. We would need to do that both for the Jefferson School and whatever school is here. Before we do that, we have to make the decision though on which is going where, right? Because it will be different. So for example, if there was a neighborhood school here, one of the things I'm sure we would want to look at is whether or not the partnership with the Marine Aquarium, which is basically an environmental science theme, would be carried up from Odyssey into the rest of the K-5 grades. I mean, that would be an obvious thing that you want to look at and discuss. And then, I think other choices that parents have expressed interest in, things that would be also considered, but that's the Ed Specs process. That does require.
So if I can, that's the point though, Dr. Adamowski. So if you're an architect, at least I've seen some of the conceptual drawings, whether it was a K-8 based on the number of classrooms, what it would look like, that configuration, what would it look like as a K-5. So if we were to even take that maritime magic theme and we were to move it up, or any kind of a science-based thing, there may be additional classrooms that you want to have labs or whatever that go above and beyond what currently your architect has said can fit on this footprint, because the footprint has some idea as to how much space you could use. And I see that as something critical before you can ask parents to make a decision. Do you want to have your Columbus school here, or do you want to limit yourself to a community school at Columbus, which, as I understand, has even less space that you can become creative in making something that's attractive as a community school?
So I think John has, in previous presentations, suggested that there's enough flexibility in the site where you determine, for example, you wanted a Legos lab or an engineering lab in an elementary school or something of that nature, that there would be the flexibility to do that. We're talking about a number of feet here as opposed to several more acres. So I think that flexibility does exist, and John,
the flexibility absolutely does exist. These are sketches, they're concepts. The Ed Spec does need to be written. It has not been written. There are a number of steps in part of this process, and you'll find Mayor and the overall Common Council have to come up with a funding plan by June 30th. So part of this process is, here are the concepts. You take them the next step. You write the next steps. You fill in these blanks. Because these are just sketches to realize that it is possible, and that's an outline. So I think there's a lot of work to fill in that outline. And so there's a good bit of time there. I think we're out of time.
Okay, we are out of time, and like I said, if you have some individual questions that you want to ask before you leave, let me tell you briefly about the survey and where you can find it. There's two different ways. It is online at the Norwalk Public Schools website. It is in English and Spanish. If you would like to fill it out online, we encourage you to do that. I also have some hard copies here tonight if you'd like to grab one. They can be dropped off if any board member with Israel for the court folks, and with Onisha for the preschool folks, South Norwalk Community Center. We'll have the drop-off points online as well, and we're going to be getting that out in a variety of ways.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you Mr. Mayor, Mr. Superintendent, members of the Board of